Welcome to FitPro Foundations, the podcast where you'll hear fitness professionals provide the ideas and the inspiration behind their success. My name is Karyn Silenzi, and today it is my pleasure to introduce Nathalie Lacombe, coach and cupid of Canada's fitness industry. Blending 25 years of international experience with degrees in psychology and exercise science, Nathalie passionately supports thriving careers for fitness leaders. She's the Vice President of the Fitness Industry Council of Canada and a CanFitPro advisory panel member. Nathalie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy that we're going to get to catch up and have a good amount of time to share with the fitness professionals today.
I'm really excited to have you on today because I was thinking back to the day that I first heard you speak. I was volunteering at a CanFitPro conference and I was admitting attendees into your session, and I found myself enthralled by what you were saying. And can I just say how grateful I am that we are now speaking again and our paths have crossed and we have this opportunity to get into some really deep and important stuff for fitness professionals.
Yes, I'm happy that, first of all, I always have this fear when people say that, and I'm like, oh God, what did I say? Because you never know what happened in those situations, but I'm thrilled to hear that it was a positive experience for you and that we can continue on that today.
To have the effects of your speech last for so long, 6 or 7 years, really says something about the power of words.
That's very rewarding. Thank you for sharing that.
I would love to start off with having you provide a broad overview of what it is that you do now.
It's a buffet of all kinds of things that bring me joy and help bring joy to other people's careers and joy to movement to people. And so the main focus for my work is career and business coaching for fitness professionals and executives and education companies. And so I do that through consulting and coaching and all kinds of educational programming and things like that. I also work very much in the industry on a daily basis. And so whether it's teaching yoga classes, fitness classes, personal training, meditation, etc. There's a lot of that goes on. And so that's towards consumers and people who are passionate about movement. And then I have the pleasure of having a good amount of corporate wellness workshops that I get to do. And right now, all of that is done virtually. At this date in Quebec, it's still for me, all of that is done virtually, but I have an incredibly varied schedule, which is, I think, what I always loved. I'm not somebody who's big on routine. I like to keep things different and challenging and fun, and really helping people find joy in movement and their careers and their leadership and their business is what keeps me going.
Someone asked me a very similar question that I would now like to pose to you, because you and I have similarities in that we both educate and work with clients and corporations providing education on the fitness aspect or the fitness scene. So what then makes you want to continue teaching classes? Is it to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the fitness scene, or is it something that really is a large part of who you are?
Probably both. And so, yes, it was. And even when I was prior to 2.5 years ago to moving back to Montreal to being closer to family, I had the pleasure of leading the team at CanFitPro in Toronto as vice president. And I still taught classes and CanFitPro provides incredible education and runs events and did at the time throughout the country, now does it virtually and will go back to in-person events. But I presented at those events. So I think part of it is to have your hands in the sauce, to still be able to, I'm going to use a lot of food analogy. I don't know if that's a French Canadian thing, but is to still have your hands in the sauce, la main à la pâte. So you have your hands in the dough and to still not be a step removed from it, but to actually do the work that you coach other people to do it in ways that are different. And so some of my clients are very focused on modality or styles that are not necessarily part of my repertoire, but my wheelhouse is motivating others and supporting others and doing that. And I think like a big part of what I do is what's mine is yours. And so for that vessel of what's mine to stay really, really full, to continue to share, I need to dive in and get my, like I said, my hands in the sauce and get my feet wet in terms of that to continue to do it and to come from a place of integrity. I think that's probably a big part of it too, is I know because I do it. I do it every single day, and motivating people to move, and therefore motivating people who motivate people to move is a big part of what I have. And so, I think it just keeps me going. Like I said, I like the variety of it, doing it purely from an executive standpoint or purely from coaching or purely from teaching, I think would have been difficult for me. Having the variety of all of that keeps me in a schedule that makes me really happy and is balanced and also doesn't exhaust me. And so it keeps me, the vitality stays there because it's different. It's not same. It's not repeated. It's, I've worked in the industry for over 25 years now, and I'm at a point now where I think I've worked diligently enough to know what keeps me rested, what keeps me reflective, and what keeps me generous. And part of that is the balance of both of those things.
I think that those are words of wisdom that we can all really take something from. So tell me a little bit more about your current business model. You mentioned that you were coaching coaches. Talk about that a little bit more.
Really, what I've had the opportunity to do since leaving the executive position at CanFitPro is provide really what I've done forever. And it was the same thing that I was doing when I was there, and with all the organizations that I work for or work with in collaboration with, is help support them in their needs to have thriving careers. Whether that's part-time, whether that's a couple of times a week, or whether it's full-time, a big part of what I do is help fitness coaches understand their value, help them understand where they are, what they can provide, how valuable the services they work so hard to be wonderful at mean to the people that they give, and be able to create something that makes sense for them in the wheelhouse that makes sense for them, and be able to not just go through the motions, but oftentimes people come to me when they're stuck. That's the business model is a bit that is people feel stuck either because they've worked for a big organization, they want to go out on their own, or they've tried to switch from personal training to group fitness or group fitness to coaching, and they're a little bit stuck, or they've just been going through the motions. And when they pull out of it, which the pandemic did for a lot of fitness professionals, is when they stop for a little bit, they're like, I'm in the routine and I'm giving and I'm giving and I'm giving. And I feel like I am not fulfilled by this anymore. And that's usually when they end up coming to me. And so for me, that's either sharing resources with them that makes it easier for them to get unstuck to a certain extent, or to the full extent to actual month-long coaching programs focused on taking them from stuck to fulfilled again and thriving. And so there's a variety of programs that I offer, some of them virtual, from a variety of price points. Some of them are really one-on-one coaching, because I do feel that coaches need coaches. And it's something that we forget in our industry from time to time. And so a lot of it is that. And the other big part of my business model is like that cupid part, that matchmaking part, having the finger on the pulse of what's happening. And when I hear about whether it's, a fitness company or an education company or a new gym opening or a new education program coming in, being able to matchmake or translate who they are for and identifying the right fitness professionals or the right executives or the right gym, and connecting those people together to make it a win-win so that everybody can continue to serve the people that they need to serve. So believe it or not, matchmaking is a big part of my business model, because that helps me know who's out there, what they need, and I can just make that connection that much faster and enjoy being that cupid.
It sounds like you provide clarity on a number of different levels for the people that you represent and work with. And this is interesting because in 2020, 2021, we've all faced a lot of changes that happened very rapidly, and it wasn't something that we had ever been exposed to before. And I find that a lot of people have fallen into this trap of predictive reasoning. So they're thinking based on the assumption that the future is going to be pretty much like the past. And obviously, COVID completely disrupted that. So, how do you deal with those individuals then where they have these views where the world is supposed to work in a very specific way and that no longer exists?
You know what? I think for me, it's pulling it back to what we do. We work in a change industry. We change people's bodies, minds, and spirits. We know the things, we know that people need change. We know that people need to, the best thing that you can do when you hit a plateau physically, for example, your personal trainer working with a client, is to actually bring about change. We're constantly throwing new exercises, new modalities, new pieces of equipment to others in the expectation that they're just gonna pick it up and like it, and that's the program, and that's what we're meant to do. So same thing happens to us. To me, there's an integrity piece there. There's an authenticity piece there, in that if you expect other people to handle change really well, then we need to reflect on what that means for ourselves and where that goes. And there is no going back. And if it's, there is, normality is always changing. Plus, who decides what's normal anyways? And so I like what I've noticed. I have noticed those people, and the people that I have felt compelled to connect with and help and serve are the ones that wanted to continue to serve. So the people who felt like no matter, nothing was going to stand in their way, and they were going to serve the people that needed them, serve those communities, serve those clients, serve everything, whoever needed them, they were going to continue to serve, because never have people needed health and fitness leaders more than ever before, more than now.
Mm-hmm.
More than ever before, we need health and fitness leaders. We are the ones that are supposed to be motivating other people. And so we had to dig deep. And I'm really proud of those that dug deep and were able to connect with what they felt they could do in whatever, in whatever possibilities were there. And if it wasn't in person, it was on virtual. If it wasn't in virtual, it was in the park. It was in whichever way we could still work on our soft skills more than our hard skills, work on our ability to connect and motivate and create community and provide what people were losing, which is a little bit also of social health, thanks to the things that we did. It's tough. There were times where I'm like, if I see one more fitness professional posting a photo of a Costco, super frustrated that Costco's open and the gym's closed. And I'm like, listen, people shop at Costco. 15% of the population actually exercises in a structured fitness facility like the gyms. And so, no, we're not essential. If it's 15%, then it's not. And governments made decisions based on people and public opinion, and only 15% of the public care about us. And so it was a huge shock to us, and a shock that needed to be done for us to decide the springboard and the opportunities to move forward and connect with people that we've never connected with before. So seeing people doing things like walking outside, where some people like walking's not enough, and I'm like, it's certainly better than nothing. And let's have a little bit of humility and understand that these are the people that we can serve. If they don't yet work with a coach, then let's do better. Let's do better so that the next time around, whatever happens to us in 2025 or whatever it is, the government will be like, oh, that's half the population that's there. We need to consider whether or not we're going to close these facilities. But when it's 15%, we had to suck it up, because that's who we affected. And the decisions were made in a place that was frustrating, but to me was a massive learning experience that we can absolutely bounce back from now.
I'm so glad to hear you say this, because I've heard those arguments before regarding the closing of the gyms and how everything has been handled throughout COVID. But I have not yet heard someone say that we're not essential if we're only touching 15% of the population. And you are absolutely correct. I had never thought of it that way. I knew that we were not doing as good of a job as we need to when you have 85% of the population that either doesn't need us, doesn't want us, or isn't comfortable coming into a facility. Then yes, we have work to do. And it's interesting because I was just talking to Jeff Turita a couple of weeks back about Canada's prescription to get active. And even before COVID, the rates of the population that were not meeting the minimum required level of activity was at 80%. So yeah, we do have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, Karyn. Like to say, it's not that we are not essential. We are essential to ourselves, but we're edifying that feeling within the fitness industry, right? Within ourselves and within our key members that are going to come to us no matter what. I think the language that we were using, and we're using it with FIC now, and a language that I found in developing the relationships with the governments that I've had conversations with, in particular in Quebec, is the concept, less the concept of essential, because again, there's a lot that goes into that, but the concept of being part of the solution. If we want to be a part, there's a difference between being like, an outlier part of the solution and then being a significant part of the solution. And we do have a solution to provide. We can now use this as an opportunity to communicate it so much better than we did before. And I think the combination of the pandemic and the absolutely needed discussions about inclusivity are brilliant for us to now really, as you said, reconsider how hospitable we were or not to people who needed us more than others, and seeing who we were really speaking to. And when we were communicating, marketing, creating our programming, opening up our services, doing all of these things. Because I mean, the thing that I would hate is for us to reopen and have gone from 15% of the population to just 10, and then start to feel like there's competition again within the fitness industry, as opposed to collaboration to actually be healthcare, not sick care, but to actually be part of the solution of healthcare. Because you're right, we will need to bounce back so much stronger, because the rates of physical and mental health challenges are bigger than ever before after the pandemic. So the time is now. It's our time to serve.
Mm-hmm. This is wonderful. You're saying all of the words that make my heart feel such joy with the collaboration and inclusion. Obviously, your business model has gone through a couple of different iterations with how COVID has been impacting all of us. Do you find that you're doing your business differently now, or is it just that the platform upon which you're doing your business has changed?
I would say that it's the platform. And here's where I'm going to hopefully give a piece of hope. And I want it to be hope, and I want it to be empowerment of value for fitness professionals. The way that I run I have run my business throughout the pandemic, which is, instead of flying to events, and whoever covers the flights is notwithstanding, whoever covers the hotel notwithstanding, the time involved in going to events, the time involved in going to meetings, the time involved in driving to either gyms or facilities or locations or anything else, and all of that, technically, on paper, the way I run my business now is so much more profitable, because I can teach a class and make lunch. I can present at a conference and be able to, meal plan for the week right after. I can spend time with my family, because that hour is the hour. And the setup is pretty smooth now in terms of wherever it is, the spacing and the virtual and the moving of the space from studio side to office side or everything else. Because on paper and in reality, it is more profitable. An hour for me is an hour versus flying across the country to present 2 fitness sessions, spending most of that money on, airport meals, and then coming back, and the amount of hours that's involved in that and everything else. And so I want people to see this ray of hope of it being closures of physical spaces have not only created challenges and disappointments and frustrations and everything else, but also opportunities for us to look better at the way that we do business. And so, yes, it's gone through iterations, and now it's at a place where I think I can communicate what I do much more smoothly, much more efficiently, and there will be opportunities for me to go back in person and fly to events and do all of these things. But I think the piece of it that really sits over all of that is all in the umbrella of meeting people where they're at.
Mm.
Physically, emotionally, educationally, mentally, meeting people where they're at. If somebody is at a place where they want I have a virtual program that helps people attract more clients. And somebody emailed me again and said, like, when does it start? Like, what day does it start? And I'm like, any day. You can do it in a Epsom salt bath with a glass of Pinot Grigio, if that's what makes sense for you. If you want to do it at home, like all on one day, you can do it that way. Yeah, I'm meeting people where they're at because not everybody can start at the same Monday at the same time all of the time. And so there's a bit of that for fitness professionals too. I know that education organizations reach way more people than they have before. They're expensive for us to go to. Like if you think in Canada, going to Toronto for an event and staying in the middle of summer in those hotels at $450 a night, there's just so many group fitness instructors you can fit in a room to share the cost of that. But these are, they're expensive endeavors. And yes, we get a lot out of it, but I hope that we can find some balance now in terms of our time, our value, where we invest ourselves, and not burn out as quickly because we're capable of finding fit between work and life. And I prefer the word fit. I read it somewhere a couple of years ago rather than balance, because balance is like 50-50 and really it's never 50-50, but fit resonates better with me. And I think it does for a lot of us, which is what's the right fit right now? Right now, this week, I spend most of my time on family, whereas another week I'll do that versus this I can do in mornings, this I can do in evenings. This has allowed us to meet people's needs where they are at that time and fit it more smoothly into what we need for ourselves to have longevity in our careers.
That is incredibly profound and perceptive. And you're absolutely correct. I think some people are at the point where they are mourning the loss of what was. And they're a little stuck because they may not be willing to make the adjustment. And I love fitness conferences. I love the energy and I love being able to connect with people. But at the same time, I also love having that extra time and not having to eat that airport food or wait an hour before catching my flight. So you're right. It's all about fit and about making it work where you're at for the situation that you find
Yeah.
yourself in.
And understanding that when we go back, and I'm sure we will, to fitness conferences, I hope we now we're like, it's not just about the CCs, because you can grab those really easily in a lot of other ways now. It's what am I going to get from that? And therefore, if it's not just about the CCs, am I going to make sure that I spend time creating the network of fitness professionals that I need in order for me to feel constantly motivated, not just motivated for the full days, I fill myself up, but I fill myself up with everything that I need. The connections, I think, will be more powerful. The opportunities to engage in our social and mental health, I think, will be more powerful. And that's another piece I think that, as it relates to the business model, thank goodness for a few things that have happened the last year. So the pandemic being one, I had a horrible case of sciatica a couple of months back that kind of laid me on my side for a little bit. And then more recently, had a pretty significant case of shingles. And in my head, I'm like, thank God I'm not just teaching cardio, because I teach 30-minute meditation classes a couple of times a week, and I never had to cancel those. I was able to adapt the yoga practice more through coaching than doing, and thank goodness I had prepared myself for that. The corporate wellness workshops that I do, a lot of them revolve around mental health in a way that is within the scope of practice of a health and fitness professional. And thank goodness I had that, because I kept working. And so what my body, mind, and spirit challenges over the last 18 months did is make me realize that the fit balance that I have in my work allows me to stay relevant and stay working regardless of the challenges that come my way. And I think that was really powerful versus there were years in my career where if I was injured, I was just out, and then there's no revenue coming in, and it's the sustainability was really different there. So I think a lot of us went to learning, a lot of us went to growth, and we realized that we can provide services that go beyond a workout. I hope so anyways.
I had a thought pop up and I want to jump to it right now
Yes.
before I come back to your most recent statement. Do you think that we might see hybrid conferences in the future?
Absolutely. I would be surprised if there were not, in either of two ways. And so, meaning having something that's virtual or digital or at home, which is a way that I like to look at it, as well as there. So whether it's all of the presenters and the staff is in one space and the people either show up there or it's streamed to them, or even some of the presenters and staff and everybody else stay home and some of that is still streamed throughout. So from one end to the other, from one direction to the other, absolutely. If for no other reason, having been part of an organization for 10 years that puts on events, it's way more affordable. The biggest cost related to event management is flights and hotels and accommodations and everything that goes along with that. So if the honorarium to the presenter can still be there, but you don't have to fly that person in from Australia or 2 provinces over, then absolutely. And I think it means that conference delegates will be able to access events that they never realized they had. Most of the event organizations that I speak to actually get a phenomenal amount of views recorded. The convenience of that for people who work in our industry that have very peculiar schedules. Again, some of them are full-time, which means they're available like 2 to 5 every day. The ones that are part-time might actually have to do all of their stuff on weekends and a little bit everywhere, but some of them get the same amount of views or people consuming the education live and recorded. And so the benefit to that, to just look at or look at the stuff that you missed, know how hard it is to choose between like sessions and you're like, I don't know what I want to do. And now it's like, well, it's recorded. I can keep watching it at home. The value of those events and the investments that we put into learning becomes so much greater. So yes, I think I would find it hard to believe that no, because now we can consume it and we know that it's still phenomenal. There will always be some sort of a digital consumption of that education.
I'm having a little chuckle here because you essentially described me, because I'm always torn between which sessions to attend. And so I did that these past, oh my gosh, I wrote down how many conferences, how many virtual conferences I attended in a year. And there's like 17, and some of them were multi-day conferences. And I was able to do exactly that. When I found 2 sessions that were at the same time, I could just simply listen to it at a later point in time, and it filled my cup. I'm really happy to hear you say that this is what you envision going forward, because I do think that there's a lot of value in it. Let's jump back. I want to talk a little bit more about your coaching business. Would you say that the individuals that you work with, would you define them as being entrepreneurs?
I would say entrepreneurially minded. So a big piece of what happened in the last 18 months or so is this shift from a lot of us, whether or not we actually created revenue streams from what we do on our own, but it was a shift from employee to entrepreneur. At minimum, to be choosier about the culture of the facilities at which you work. You can still absolutely be an employee or contractual person but I think there was I've always worked there, this is what it is, and we saw how they treated us. Some of them treated us beautifully, phenomenally, and the care that came in was incredible. Some of us had no communication from some of those employers for months and months and months and months, and the focus became on the members and not at all on the associates and the staff and the instructors and trainers. And so I think there's a little bit more of even if if I define loosely entrepreneurial to be like having empowerment and control over our careers versus it just be like, well, the gym takes care of that, the gym takes care of that, the gym takes care of that. At minimum, there was a little bit of that. And I saw a huge shift in that. At its biggest, it was people completely launching, trainers, instructors, coaches, launching their businesses on their own. And so from that standpoint, needed a lot of help because there were a lot of things that the gym did for them. And so everything from packaging, pricing, marketing, understanding what social media has to be there, exchanges of money, capturing leads, like everything that revolves around sales and being able to serve clients and not just be serving them, but also the accounting and the business that comes along. And so there's a lot of business coaching, yes, that I did over the last year. But from some of them, it was just maybe as simple as, and I don't want to say just, that's undermining it, but as simple as, you know what, I'm going to negotiate my rate when I come back. And I created a bit of a storm a couple of days ago, asking that if people had increased their rates on one of the social media groups for instructors. And
Yes, I saw that.
oh, some of the feedback I got, and people are like, no, I took a 25% pay cut. And I'm like, listen, this is and I think some of it is just that's what they did. And if that's what they did, you're like, okay, we'll do that for 3 months. Compensation isn't just money, but let's talk about compensation. If you're willing to have, excuse the expression, but skin in the game and do a profit share, maybe there's a profit share that's better there for that. One of the studios I work with now, love working with on virtual, isn't quite at the rate that I'm looking for, but I got free classes for my mom and free classes for my aunt. And during the pandemic, that means I could see them on camera at least twice a week. And I'm like, I get to see my mom twice a week. That's got great value for me during the months where I wasn't actually allowed to see her in person. And so that was okay. And we did that for a certain time. And now that they're reopening, we agreed to renegotiate the rate, as opposed to just, okay. And then some people are like, I've been at the same rate for 20 years. But honestly, if instructors are still, I used to make $24 a class 24 years ago. And I don't think it's okay to just be okay and just be like, well, the industry's been hit hard. Sure. So let's relook at the model and decide what makes sense. If there's other stuff that you get from that, because it's a short drive and the kids get free childminding, okay, so let's understand what compensation is. From your question of entrepreneurial, there's been a lot of that discussion that has been us taking some power over what it means. These aren't they're not side hustles. They're not just a pastime. Even if it's part-time, it's still a career. It's not just an hour, right, Karyn? Like, it's never just 30 minutes. It's never just an hour. Everything that goes along with that. Let's see if we can understand our value better and then find the right places that respect that value, which may or may not give us the exact rate we're looking for, but still understand the value of what we bring to the members, to the organization, and to our communities.
And what a wonderful way of having that value add, as you mentioned, with your mom and your aunt being able to attend classes. Was that a solution that the company provided to you, or had you brought that up to them?
I came up with that one. I think that in a lot of places, again, I don't like to assume that the people who fall under a more traditional definition of entrepreneurs or studio owners or operators are necessarily at a place of business that's more creative than I am. I know the things that are valuable to me. I get creative with those things. I am part of the solution. It's not well, can you give me anything else? And if not, well, whatever. Maybe it's educational support. Maybe there's a certification that I'm interested in, and we will host it. I'll help bring in that certification, and in exchange, I'll get a free. I'm happy to use my creativity to help us come up with something. That's what negotiating is. It's not just asking for a number and expecting the other party to come up with it. If I care about that employer or that studio or that owner operator, and I'm aligned with their mission and their values, then I'm perfectly happy to contribute in ways that go beyond teaching the classes, training the clients, or doing the coaching or consulting. I'm happy to find other ways to work with that. And the fact that I do a lot of different things helps me stay creative, right? And so I'd love that discussion to continue within instructors and trainers in particular, to see if we can be, again, part of the solution, because that also enhances my value and it helps them see that I mean it, that I do really want us to find a place where we can come to an agreement that everybody feels like they're gaining and serving.
I think that if this is part of the services that you offer, helping fitness professionals negotiate their value and worth, I think you're going to have a lot of people lined up knocking on your door for assistance, because I do think that a large majority of fitness professionals just accept the situation for what it is. And they'll complain about it, and they'll get to a point where they feel miserable about it. But at the end of the day, they're not negotiating their worth. So do you believe that someone could negotiate their worth in the middle of their career with a company? Or does it have to be now when there's so much change that this is the perfect time for that? This episode of the FitPro Foundations podcast is brought to you by Time to Train Fitness, your home for live and on-demand virtual fitness classes for every level of fitness. Work out with amazing certified instructors that want you to push through any barriers. At Time to Train Fitness, you'll find quality workouts across 6 class formats, including indoor cycling, HIIT, bar, yoga, strength training, and dance cardio. Stream brand new classes live every week or choose from over 400 classes available anytime, on demand. Use the code in the description to view all the membership options and to start a free 5-day trial. Get ready to press play on your next workout.
I think any time's a perfect time for that. And to your point of the, they end up being frustrated and complaining. And to me, nobody deserves that. I've been in situations myself where I wasn't enjoying whatever it is I was doing. And it might have been part of it compensation, part of it might have been a bad culture fit, but I had to pull myself out because I'm like, unless I am providing a service from a place of joy and generosity, then I don't deserve it, and neither do the people who are paying to show up, So here's what I will share from that. A lot of it has to do with optimism. And I think the optimism and confidence, and I realize that, and of course, a big part of what I do with my coaching clients is build confidence, is build them up and create certainty and be that springboard of yes, actually the rates you're asking for are very reasonable, and do the math on but if I'm asking for $100 an hour, am I ever going to find people? And then we do the math and they can only take 20 clients a week. And I'm like, I think we can find 20 people they're going to pay on. I mean, some of it is literally just running through the math and helping them realize that we're not looking for thousands of people, just the number of people that they need. But a big part of it is optimism, beyond the confidence. And a key trait to optimism, not people who are optimists, but people who are, everybody's working on their optimism. The key trait to that is curiosity. And curiosity and creativity are a key part to it. So I would, before going into one of these situations, no matter when it is, take a little bit of time to be curious about what that facility, gym, everything else is looking for. They right now want to connect with people. If you happen to have great social media engagement, which by the way, as you know, Karyn, is very different than massive followings, it's good engagement. And if you've got good local engagement and you can actually share the posts from the facility, create some fun contests for a free membership, do a special family class right now because, as an example, we're at a time of year where summer is coming. People don't know what to do with their kids. They've been at home for a year. They're like, we seriously need some help right now. Get creative, get curious, find out what their needs are, and that supports the optimism. But going into it with poor confidence and anything that revolves around cynicism will, of course, land you exactly where it's predicted for you to be. So tapping into that, finding out what's in it for them, that's a big part of the curiosity. It's what's your goal right now? How many clients did you have before closing? What is it that you want to get to now? Are you looking for retention? Are you looking for renewals? Are you looking for referrals? And how can I be a part of that? Here's something I can do. Have you ever had somebody do that? And maybe they'll just try it. That's a cool thing, I think, right now. As stressful as it is and as financially charged as a situation is right now, I think a lot of people are like, let's just try it. Like, everything's broken. We broke the mold. everything got broken over the last 18 months. And so when things are broken, let's just pick up the pieces, put them away and be like, let's just try something. Go into it with that, what's the worst that can happen? We can't, have just, we live through the worst that can happen. So let's try something and give it a shot and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we try something else and we see where we land with all of these things. And I think, again, that spirit of collaboration and having some optimism and curiosity and creativity will absolutely lead us to better revenue for the facilities and better careers for the professionals.
And better relationships.
And better relations. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that when you're at a point where people are unhappy in their roles because they feel that they're not getting paid their worth and they're on the precipice of leaving, the company needs to take a step back and realize that they're going to have to put in time, resources, and money to get new people up to speed again.
Absolutely. Hiring and onboarding is incredibly expensive. And if it's not a right fit, it's not a right fit. I think a lot of us have looked at our schedules, the way that we do what we do, and decided where it's a right fit. It's so, everything goes so much smoother, to your point, in the relationship. If there's things that we can fix in the relationship, then let's work on that. If from either party we realize it's not a right fit, it's okay. Part of what I do for executives is helping them with performance management and helping the entire employee process, which includes onboarding and includes dismissals. Because if something doesn't work, then something doesn't work. And if it's something that they can't do and they're not willing to do and be part of that discussion, that negotiation, or anything else, then that's okay. It's okay. I think we take things really to heart and personally. There's people that have said, they're like, oh my God, they slammed the door in my face. I'm like, literally? They're like, no, they just didn't call me back. And I'm like, okay, let's take it down a notch there. It's we get really emotionally charged with these things, and that's all right because we're super passionate, but there's a time for the passion and there's a time to be reasonable and be rational and understand that a no might just mean not right now, might mean not a good fit, but to say yes to things, you have to say no to others, and that's okay.
My goodness, I feel like I need to have you on speed dial so we can have these types of conversations daily because you're bringing so many things to light in a very non-emotional way that I think that people need to hear this type of rational thought and guidance right now more than ever, because I'm not sure how things are going in the industry all across Canada, but I can tell you that here in Calgary, there seems to be a significant shortage of qualified fitness professionals. And with that comes a lot of emotion because we're opened up again. It's go time. We need to have a full schedule for summer, that is. But the people that are working are finding themselves overbooked or overtaxed because the great migration. A number of individuals have left the fitness industry. And a year ago, I would not have predicted that. In fact, I can remember having a conversation with one of the group fitness directors saying, you're going to have your pick of the cream of the crop. And that did not happen. I think perhaps if COVID restrictions had lasted half the amount of time that they did, we may have seen that. But we're at the point now where people have left the industry in droves. And that's concerning.
It is. It's, I always turn the mirror on ourselves when things like that happen. There's always an opportunity for us to learn as an industry, as industry leaders, right? And so what led so many professionals to see that there was not a future for them in this industry? Because if you go to the flip side of that, what I felt and communicated and really tried to support is that never have people needed us more to support their physical, mental, social, and immune health. And so the dichotomy between those two things, we need to take some responsibility for. What did the fitness industry communicate that felt dire to those who thought their careers were there? And how did we serve or not serve? Did we provide career work opportunities to the fitness professionals in a digital format? Did we set them up? Did we empower them? Did we let them know that things were going to change? Did we say, like, you know what, if you need to take 3 months, that's okay. When we reopen, here's what it's going to look like. Or did we present something that was dire? It was. I'm not going to say that it's not. There were times where they were incredibly tough, but that's when leadership becomes really, really challenging. And so it's, that's what I wonder. That's what I think. And there's new people. I mean, you as a trainer for a few education organizations, there's new people that have joined the industry. I think some of them didn't necessarily leave, but went on their own to do their own thing and continue to serve people. It'll be interesting to see the opportunities that come up. It's a springboard, right? Or it's a
Pendulum.
a pendulum. Thank you. And so it swings to one direction and then comes back, and we're going to see where it
Mm-hmm.
lands. Thinking of it utopically, I'm like, I hope that the best of the best are the ones that stayed, but I'm sure that that's not the case. I'm sure really great professionals left. And if they needed to, pay their bills and put food on the table in the industry that they had chosen was closed and they were not opportunities that were there, then they needed to do what was right for them. And that's totally okay.
Exactly.
I'm at a point right now where literally I'm spending, and I was always the wait till you earn before you spend. So I did everything for free on virtual until I had some revenue coming in, and then I'm like, now I'm gonna buy a camera and a ring light and some earbuds, and I'm like, that's it. It still wasn't a lot, and I kept doing it, and now the echo in the office studio that I use is bothering me, and so I'm having it redesigned to put in some, velvet drapes to create better audio because I'm going to continue to do it. And some people will just go back to in person and they're perfectly happy there. Some people go outdoors. I don't know. I just feel like my whole thing during it was the I'm still here. I know that this is a time of incredible challenge and change. I'm talking about the participants, right? The community, the people that I serve in my classes and trainings and workshops and everything else. But I was like, I'm still here. Whatever I can do, I will do. Let's figure this out. I'd love the millions of dollars of equipment, but I don't need it. We can still help you benefit from movement in all of your spheres of health. And so, but this is my career. Yes. And it's an absolute full-time career, and it's all I've given my juju to for a quarter century. So that's where it was. Hopefully those people will see the opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
re-engage, and come back in a way that makes sense for them. There's moms I've spoken to that are like, I'm not going back to teaching 4 nights a week because I love being home and having dinner with my family, and that's totally cool. So the pendulum's swinging, and I think things will shift around, and we'll see where it all
That's wonderful.
lands.
And I think that's very optimistic. And optimistic, not a false optimism, but hope. I think that there's some really good things that we have to look forward to. And this thought just occurred to me when we're talking about virtual fitness and individuals striking out into virtual fitness. Prior to the pandemic, we saw a lot of companies or corporations that were looking to adopt another company's version of how they did the business, with the thought that if I imitate what they're doing, I will have the same success. And then we saw a lot of the individual instructors move on to virtual. And I'm not sure about you, but I witnessed a lot of this where there was a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of help amongst fitness professionals that were trying to get set up to get this done correctly. But everyone fell into a very specific set pattern. And I'm wondering, have you noticed anyone really striking out and doing something different? Or do you find that everyone adopted a very similar set of guidelines with how to do virtual fitness?
I think people went with what they knew, which I think in a time of stress, trauma, and grief and change is a little bit normal. I think some of it had to feel familiar for it to feel good because everything else was changing. And I do see that some struck out, to your point, struck out into different things. I know for me, the focus on mental immune health was definitely bigger than I had before in everything that I do. So even in cardio classes, there's a big portion of it that was that to help people drive that. I think where it happened is, as to your point, everybody got their cameras, they got their, they got their headsets, they got their music, they got rid of the delay, and then they're like, okay, now let's go. And then yes, it might have stagnated there for a lot of them. And what really realized is they were like, okay, I'm getting 10 people per class, and then, for example, if they're doing group fitness, and then 8 people class, and then 6 people per class, and they're like, well, I don't know if this makes sense anymore, either financially or it's just what they said is it's just not working. And there was a lot of the like, oh, people are, have Zoom fatigue, they're just COVID tired, they just don't want to do that. And some, to your point, probably not enough, some were like, I need to work on the soft skills a little bit more. I need to create community. There's some that have reached out to me. And so some organizations that do a lot of corporate virtual fitness, and they're like, the instructors are just exhausted because nobody turns on the cameras. They feel like they're teaching into a void. What can we do? And I'm like, well, here's the stuff that I find works. Here's the pieces where for me, we're still able to connect. We're still able to give them something different. It's not a replicate of the in-person workout. into a virtual format. A lot of us changed our timing. Most of us went well under 60 minutes, because 60 minutes is really long on virtual. And so we adapted. We added transitions at the beginning, because somebody could have been a budget meeting and 30 seconds later they got their sneakers on, you know. There's things like that we needed to do to learn. The piece of it that I think I would hope people know, however, is that it's not about competing with Silicon Valley. It's not you versus Apple Fitness. It's not you versus Peloton. It's not you versus Les Mills. There are these ultra celebrity types of platforms, and then there's the uber local. And in the same way that there's a massive push right now to eat local and do all of these things, these local small businesses, there is a push there. And you don't need 4 million people. Maybe Peloton does, but you don't. You need the number of people that make sense in your business. And so looking at it from that standpoint and being like, the people who I can serve, what are their needs? Do they need community? Great. Then I need to add something that reconnects them into a community within that. Do they need something that involves their family? Do they need more nutrition support? Should I do a kitchen coaching session once a month with them for free that is a surprise and delight? Again, this is where the entrepreneurial stuff comes in. So if you're running a business, you're running a business. It's not taking what you did in person and just popping it into virtual, getting the equipment set up, getting the music on time, and then stopping there. It needs to be fed. You know, it's a business, needs to be fed just like anything else that we do. I don't know if that answers your question.
Brilliant. It answers it absolutely. And it actually took me back to a conversation that you and I had a number of months back about that very situation where you're trying to support local businesses, but how you approach that situation makes all the difference in the world, because it's not a competition. As you say, it's not us against them, because we're still only touching 15% of the population. There is more than enough business to go around for the right-minded person. And community is so very important when we're building up these businesses of our own. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm trying to be very cognizant of how much of your time I am taking. So, do you have any exciting things going on right now? What's happening in the world of Nathalie Lacombe?
Listen, the redesign of the studio and office is making me really excited. My husband's going to paint this weekend. I know it sounds silly, but there's a permanence to it that I think we need to feel some gratitude and pride for having done what we've managed to do over the last 18 months. And I'm gifting myself and my partners and my clients and my participants with an environment that I feel I can thrive even more in. And I think that that's something that's really cool for me. I know it sounds silly, but it's something that I find really nice in terms of that. And there's new stuff on the horizon. So I am going back to in-person in a way that I find really exciting. There's an organization or a company called Decathlon, and they're a retail fitness apparel store that's from France that's coming into Canada. And they have sections of their stores called Decadians, in which they offer studio space for free to coaches to come in and offer their programming as inclusive as possible. So they're looking right now for coaches that can offer things, for example, to special needs families and, you know, a few different things. They really want the coaches to come in. Obviously for them, it brings in foot traffic to them. But as I'm pandemic proofing my career, because we all need to keep doing that in whichever way that resonates with people, retail still did well. So my first in-person classes are my own classes that I'm teaching. So a yoga for healthy backs class, because we're sitting almost 2 hours more a day than we were before. So that's me looking at a crisis and turning it into an opportunity to help people with a yoga for healthy back, and then a yoga and training class, which combines my fitness and my yoga. And I just find it really fun and cool. And it gives me the freedom to kind of do what I want. If I'm feeling more fitnessy or feeling more sassy, I can put some of that in. But I'm doing those on Thursday afternoons in retail, because Thursday afternoon in retail is a good time. And I'm like, this is cool. I'm going to try it. I sell them myself. It's, you know, they promote it through their community, but it's something that is purely entrepreneurial for me. And I'm like, this is something that makes sense. There are studios that we'll go back to. There are studios that I won't. There are events that I'll go back to. There are events that I won't. They will be for different reasons than before. And so that's what's new and exciting for me, is the filter with which I choose my projects and partners very much have to do with culture and vision and mission and community, and how I am fulfilled financially as well as otherwise. And I've reflected on that a lot. And I hope that fitness professionals are taking the time to reflect on that in order to bounce forward into a career and serving that keeps them more fulfilled versus, like you said, this concept of going back. And so I'm launching programs to help fitness instructors and personal trainers and coaches with that. The digital program of 7 steps to attract more clients is a super affordable one that helps them go through the clutter of the overwhelm of all of that. There's wonderful things on the horizon. I'm going to tell you though, Karyn, I'm a hugger and I'm being really cognizant that not everybody else is. Because I think I might have imposed my hugs in the past. And now I'm like, oh, not everybody's ready for that. And so there is a compassion and an empathy and a need for connection that is very different now than it is before. And I'm really excited to see how we will respect one another and care for ourselves and care for one another differently moving forward.
Wonderful words to end this on. I think that's just excellent advice. And again, leaves me feeling very hopeful that COVID has not only taught us more about what we need to be focused on in order for our health and wellness, but that we have greater respect for others and the choices that they make. And we've also been able to experience new business ventures.
And it's less about the bodies we sculpt, it's more about the lives we save from now on.
Gosh, absolutely. I love it. So, where can people find you so that they can see when you're teaching your classes, where you're teaching your classes, what types of courses you have that may be of interest to them? Where can they get all of that good stuff?
So they can find all of it on my website at natalielacombe.com. Find me quite easily on Instagram at Nathalie Lacombe Coaching and on Facebook at Nathalie Lacombe Fitness. I'm not very hard to find. If you look for me, I'll be happy to connect with you. And like I said, what's mine is yours. I thrive off seeing other people have phenomenal careers and businesses.
And that comes across. That's very evident. I'm going to put all of that information into the show notes so that our listeners are able to reach out to you very easily. Any final parting words or sage pieces of advice that you have for us?
That would be the one, that piece of it, that for us to be part of the solution, we need to remember, communicate, and demonstrate that we are not just about the bodies we sculpt, but more about the lives we save. That's what I would add.
I love it. Thank you so much. With eternal gratitude, I am so happy to have had this opportunity to speak with you and to pick your brain and also to share the wonderful thoughts and abilities that you have with people listening globally. And I really do hope that they take an opportunity to reach out to you because you are an absolute wealth of information and a cupid to the fitness industry. So with that, thank you so much.
Merci.